Once you have all of your letters traced and created as individual shape objects, we want to go in and alter the type. And altering type is a great thing to do for logos because it makes it recognizable as uniquely your own. And probably the best example of this that anybody should know is the Coca-Cola logo. You can see how they began with a simple script and then extended and gave it loop-to-loops and some very unique characteristics that make it worldwide recognizable as just the Coca-Cola logo. So the first thing we need to do is break into these existing paths, because if I zoom in on here, you can see that if I start drawing an extension, it creates a new shape, so we end up with that problem again. We don't want that, so just throw that thing away. You can change the outline of a shape by choosing any of the points and moving it. That's probably the most straightforward way to alter a shape, but I'm going to go even further than that. The thing that I want to do is add a tail, kind of like how the Coca-Cola folks had done to their logo. The thing I need to do that, though, is to actually break into this closed path. And to show this even better, I'm going to set the fill to none. That way we can see just the path. To break into a path, you need to set and delete a point between two points that are already there. So here I'll demonstrate on this bottom part. I've got my pen tool. I'm going to hover over the path between these 2 points until I see the plus sign and then click to add a point. If I hit delete immediately, that path will disappear and now it's an open path that I could easily add to. So I'm just going to hit Command Z because that's not actually where I want to add my tail. I want to add it going off to the right. But do you see my problem? I don't actually have very much room. So to give myself room, I'm going to set my background color to white by clicking on the default color clips right there, and then grabbing my crop tool, I can extend out the canvas. Now the reason why I changed the color was so that it would match the rest of my background. Whenever you extend your canvas, it will be, the new area will be whatever your background color is. Grab my pen tool again and zoom on in. So I want to create a tail that comes out to the side and then curls up at the end. The first thing I want to do is to break into this path so I can extend it. But if I simply add a dot here on the side and then delete it, this whole path is going to disappear. So I have to put kind of a tourniquet, if you want to call it that, at a point so that I can delete a little bit of it without the whole thing deleting. So I'm going to hover over the line with my pen and add a point where I want the top of that tail to begin. And then between that one and the bottom point, add another one, and this is the one we'll delete. So click and delete. And now we have an open path. At this point, I can click on either of those and continue on with my tail. So I'm going to click this top one and then hold shift so it's perfectly flat. Now I've got a little tail hanging out there because of this handlebar. So I'm going to hold down option and click once on that point so that I don't have this curving. Now I'm holding shift, clicking out, and then I would make whatever shape I felt like for my tail. Mine is just going to be really basic because there's not a lot of point for me taking a long time in this tutorial to make a tail. Once I've made a tail, I can come back and close my original path by hovering over that last open point when I get the little zero and clicking. I don't particularly like the angle of that, so if I hold down my command and click on the line, I will see my points again. I can do this a whole bunch of ways. I'm going to try adding another one here and dragging it out a little bit, and then holding down my option key to move that Bezier handle up just a little bit. And then command clicking on that point will let me select it, and I can move it down a pixel at a time with just my arrow keys. So now that looks more to me like it's actually flat in the way that I want it to appear. Just to remind you, you can actually choose more than one point at a time to effect. So if I wanted to make this whole tail a little bit longer, instead of deleting it and starting over, all I have to do is hold Command down to get my white arrow, click and drag around all those points to select them. Now, with Command held down for my white arrow, I can grab that group of points and move it, and if I hold Shift, it will move just straight out. I could make it a little longer, or maybe in this case, a little bit shorter. Now that I have a closed shape again, I can return my shape to its filled state so it matches the rest of my letters. So that's how I would go about adding a tail and adding points and deleting points. The next thing I want to do is add a root system down here below the R that extends off. To do that, I need more room down at the bottom, so I'm going to grab my crop tool and simply click and drag that handle and hit enter when it's the size that I want it. So you can do exactly what we did over here and draw out your own roots, but I would suggest finding a picture reference to use in the first place. So I'm going to go to Chrome, and I did a search already and found a piece of copyrighted clip art that I liked the overall shape of the root system. So I'm going to copy this and bring it into my image and help use those roots to help me create my own. So I'm not ripping off or breaking copyright by borrowing just a little bit of a shape from another image. This is utilizing your resources. So what I'm doing is just sizing it so that it fits more or less the bottom of my R. Okay, that looks pretty good. And once I hit enter to finalize, I'll also lower the opacity quite a bit so that it's not so visually distracting. Once I've done that, I need to come to my R layer. I've got my pen tool. You can always switch to your path or path layer with your pen tool holding down Command to get your white arrow. So there, I've clicked on it, and I'm going to again set the fill to 0 so that I can really see the path that I'm working on. This time I do need to delete this path down here at the bottom, so I'm going to grab my pen tool, click on that path to make sure it's selected, and then hover over the line till I get the plus and add a point and then hit delete to open that path. Now we've got a whole lot of curves here, and you've learned some pretty nifty tricks in the last couple of weeks or actually last week, to use your pen tool to draw out some really nice curves to get them really, really smooth. And you can certainly do that here. In fact, that's what I would recommend doing. But I wanted to show you a new pen tool. Over here in your toolbox, if you click and hold down on your pen tool, there's the Freeform pen tool. This works the same in the sense that you need to click on the beginning or the end of the path line that you want to continue, but instead of clicking and dragging to create Bezier handles, this is a free-form tool, and when I'm working with a mouse it's not that great, so this is kind of why I don't use this tool too much. But you can freehand, and then when you let go, Photoshop will look at the lines you've drawn and try and simplify it a little bit. Often with this tool there's a bit of cleanup you need to do, so I'm coming back in here and finding these little too many extra pixels or points and deleting the extra ones, and maybe even holding down Option and clicking on one to smooth it out. So if I click and drag, I can create fresh Bezier handles to get rid of awkward points like that. To continue my line, I can simply click and continue on. So in case you hadn't noticed, it's probably a good idea to zoom in a little bit. And this is going to be the last bit I do with this freeform. I have a Wacom tablet, and that tends to work a little bit better with the freeform. You can tell that this really didn't keep the shape, so it doesn't stay particularly true to what you're working on, although you can, let's see, nope, it doesn't. I thought it had a place where you could specify how many points were going down, but it doesn't. But you might find that a little easier to use instead of always having to click and drag out handlebars. So whatever works for you, I would continue on with just my regular pen tool. I just wanted to introduce you to that one. You can switch back and forth between them for whichever suits the part of your project better, and I'm not actually going to finish this whole bit of root system here while you're watching. I think you get the idea. Once that would be finished, I would close my path by clicking on this last open point, and then I could set the fill so that it looked like it was a complete logo word. Of course, when you're done, you want to I almost said get rid of the evidence, but really get rid of any unnecessary layers. Keep in mind that this art is somebody else's art. If I take the root system, I'm not infringing on copyright. But if I took the whole tree and used it in my R with the same placement of leaves and branches and roots, that would be copyright infringement. So the point of making your own logo is to make something that is unique to you and not going to be mistaken for anybody else's work.